Buddy, Eric Dorward here with the Spartan Rocketry Club, and it is time to start the last stages here of putting together my vintage build of the Estes Sentinel. So there are a few things that need to be done. One thing I'm going to mention just quickly, well, I'm going to throw these decals in first, I think. But what I'm going to mention here quickly is that the instructions for this actually call for me to use, well, they call for me to use a little bit of paint, and I am supposed to paint an 1/8 of an inch ring around the rocket, right? Well, not quite the whole way up, but like here, I think it looks like. I'm going to take the nose cone off because I don't need it for a while. I I really don't want to do that. As fun as it is to mask off a nice looking 1/8 inch section, there is a cheap and easy alternative to this, and it's right here. This is some automotive pinstriping tape. I haven't even opened it yet. I did order this. I've been meaning to get, I have some other colors. I have some red somewhere. But I've been meaning to get some silver, and this was as good a time as any. This stuff, provided I can actually open the package. There we go. This stuff is really easy to use, usually, and I hope I don't jinx myself into that, but you just get a little, it's tape. Works just like tape. Some of the stuff actually, ooh boy, when you get some of these decals that have stickers on that are just colorful rings, this is actually basically what it is, so we'll get to that. Anyway, I've started to warm up the decals here. This one I chose first because it's one of the nice looking, easier ones. Anyway, it looks like it's going to go around the middle, and by the way, I'm using the glossy color print here to see where all this stuff goes. I was somewhat worried about how this was going to fare putting it in the water, because it is, of course, quite old, and this is kind of like the one part in all this that I can't easily replace. So fortunately, it looks like it's peeling off pretty nicely. In fact, it came off easier than I thought it would. These, so Estes' decals over the years have changed a bit. I'm not sure if this is a better or worse system, but the newer ones are just a uniform sheet, and you cut them out and you basically, sorry, this is a little up in the air, there we go. Anyway, you're responsible for trimming it with some accuracy, right? These actually, the decal itself is already kind of trimmed for you, so you don't really have to worry about cutting it out. And this is actually, I did another video some time ago with an older Estes decal, and I mistakenly thought that they were self-stick, right? I didn't think they were water slides, but in fact they were. And it's because they look suspiciously like stickers. Like, all you need to do is just pop them off and they'll adhere just fine. They're not, and they look that way because they've actually been trimmed or maybe manufactured in such a way where the amount of decal is actually, it's pretty small. The only real problem I'm having here is that, well, one, I aligned it pretty well but not perfectly, so let's try to get that alignment right. But it also seems to be peeling a little bit off, which is not really what I want, but yeah, overall it's pretty decent. Alright, so this other, I've soaked the larger ones here. This one didn't matter, right? It was just uniform the whole way around. Right now I've got the launch lug down, so the faces that are 90 degrees offset from that, I'm going to use as like my main body. And see, I've got these big ones right here that say the name of the missile, and there's a lift here in line with it. So I want one of these lift here's to be kind of centered in the middle of this face of the tube. And I'm just kind of guessing here. I do need to put that pinstriping somewhere up the rocket body from left it in the water. Oops. Well, a little tear there. That's annoying, but not terribly surprising given the age of this. So, fortunately, I mean, that's not ideal, but the only thing really in this is that black stripe, right? So I can just align them, and then I should be able to just make sure that they're aligned properly, and then it shouldn't make much of a difference. But my biggest concern with this whole kit wasn't the build, but getting these decals properly on, because they're probably the most fragile and unfortunately irreplaceable part of this whole endeavor. Like pretty much everything else I could address if it went amiss, but not the decals. Alright, going back to this first one, it's starting to peel off again. I'm not entirely sure why. I don't, everything looks fine. I think this might just be a factor of the age. So I'm going to try to keep an eye on that and just smooth it out if it starts to delaminate. But this is part of the reason why I'm definitely going to need a clear coat on all of this. Alright, I'm not going to do all of these in video, so I'm going to do as much as I can while the water here is warm. That's pretty much the main limiting factor, which, by the way, I kind of just bolted right in because I wanted to get this done, as much of it done as possible in the time that I have before the water gets cold. But I did trim all these, and like I said, I seriously doubt you can see this, but each of these, if you hold it in the right light, you can see that the decal is glossy where the decal exists, and then the backing of it is it's not as shiny. So typically you have to cut these out in a normal Estes kit. I mean, I still had to cut them out, but not as much. So these are going to peel off differently from what you may be used to, which, again, I don't know if it's better or worse, it's just different. Alright, anyway, let's make sure that I do this in the right way. So right now, I want them at 90 degree again, offset from the launch lug. So I'm going to put it about here. Just kind of in the middle. Now, typically, I'm a little rougher pulling these, but since I just ripped one, I'm going to be especially careful. Do keep your fingers moist. Moist fingers are how you generally avoid this problem. I'm actually going to move it up a little bit. I think it should be more centrally located. I was kind of lining it up with the end of the fin, but that doesn't look like that's what's supposed to happen on the glossy picture. Now, I am going to have to be somewhat careful here to line this up properly, because if I'm lining it up with the fin, that's easy enough. It's pretty obvious where it belongs, but since I've moved it, it's going to be a little more difficult. So I'm just going to get it on the rocket, and then that should be about right. I'm just going to roll it a little bit and see that things line up properly. Now I did change the orientation here. I can't see the other face, so I'm just kind of hoping that, well, I could have it rotated the other direction, but I kind of want it this way. So that way, it's kind of like a mirror image, like this is up, I guess. So it would be hanging from the underside of a fighter jet, or however this is supposed to be launched. Whoops. Anyway, it does seem to be basically aligned. I do want it centered between the two fins, so that was another thing to consider. Alright, so that's good. I'm not going to do all of these, especially the ones that are somewhat repetitive. The next one, this one here, is going to go, it looks like it's supposed to go, what, like this? In the body tube, probably up more like here. and they, the picture actually has some text in there. It says like, I don't know, lift here or something. I don't seem to have something that quite matches that. So it's similar but not identical. Actually, it looks like there should be 4 of those. That's interesting. I don't seem to have 4 of those. I seem to have 2 of those. Well, that's interesting. I was pretty thorough in cutting these out carefully. I don't think there are any others kicking around, but oh well. Anyway, the blue part is going to go down the body tube. So it looks like, I don't know, maybe about here. And then just carefully remove the back, and hopefully things will kind of flop in place. And adjust it. Again, you can adjust these things so long as 2 things are the case. One is the decal is wet, and the other is your hands, should be damp too. When one of those 2 things isn't the case, that's when stuff tends to tear. Jeez. I am going to go double check. I was pretty careful about removing these. I really do not think that, jeez. Now there's a little fiber or something there on the rocket body. Really did not need to have that underneath my decal. Anyway, I was really careful about that. I have no idea how or where the other ones would have disappeared to, but I'm going to put these on. I'm going to put them, again, kind of opposite to each other. If I do happen to find the other 2, like I said, I'm going to need probably more than the length of this video to do this work. Probably is going to take me 2 cups of water in order to get this done. So if I happen to find them, I'll do them in a separate application, but I'm not going to film that. It's not really worth it. Okay. Again, I wanted the dot part up. And where exactly do I have it? Actually, that probably needs a little bit more time stewing. Felt a little stuck still. Better for it to take a little bit of time than not. Let's get the pinstripe tape kind of out of there. Don't really need that right now. Alright. There we go. Now it's coming off nicely. Ooh. Huh. That was the test pattern. I certainly don't need that. There was a little like color test pattern right in the corner. I thought it was printed on the backing paper, but apparently it was not, because it came right off. I suppose it might have been. Alright, that's reasonably good. Ooh, it's way too far up though relative to everything else. This is actually a whole lot easier if you happen to have all 4, because you just do one at a time and you'd be able to see them a lot better. Check for alignment. I guess the upside to this is because they're not going to be right next to each other, it's going to be a whole lot harder for anybody to notice that you did something that wasn't quite right. Oops. Well, that's annoying. Alright. It's more or less where it was. The paper towel is, geez, that's the second time. The paper towel is damp, but it's not damp enough, so when you do, when I'm doing this, it apparently is, every once in a while it's going to drag things along like I don't like. The bottom there seems, by the way, looks like it adhered finally, so that's good. It's still a little far down. Well, that was way too far up. Yeah, I'm just kind of rotating it, and I should see basically, in the same position. I'm just going to blot this time. All right, I think the last thing I'm going to do here with the decals is there's some fins here, fin details that are going to go right at the wingtips. So it looks like the black part is going to go interior, so that's interesting. Yeah, interior to the body tube. So they're actually going to go up like this. I would have thought it would have gone the other direction. No, maybe like, yeah, I think it's supposed to go like this. So the diagonal part is going to be in line with the fin's diagonal. And it looks like there's a little bit of space between the wingtip, tip of the fin, and there we go. So, oops, so something like this. I'm going to patch that up in a moment, but do notice, right, these are mirror images of each other. So one goes on one side and the other goes on the other. Do not assume that they are all the same, for they are not. All right, I'm going to, I can get this a little bit closer, but there is going to be some of the clear plastic overhang, which I'm going to let it dry, and then before I clear coat it, and that is the next step here, I'm just going to take my hobby knife blade and I'm going to trim it right off. But I'm not going to do that until it's dry. Once it's dry, it should cut very easily. That's a little farther. I'd like to have a little bit of space at the edge, like that. Okay, so I'm going to do the last one that's in the cup right now. The water is actually not that bad, but I think I'm going to call it here. Yeah, the rest of these decals, they just go down the body tube in a variety of, well, I guess I can do one of them each. That would be fine. Let's do this one next. So I still have a decent amount of warmth left in the water, but when that starts getting cold, the whole thing becomes a much more difficult process. So, you're better off doing as much as you can, but then when you get close to the water getting, well, and it starts to get cool, that's always a good time to stop. There's no sense rushing it. Alright, anyway, these decals, they are all slightly different. They have different numbers on them, and I can read the instructions here reasonably well. This one that I just threw in is 21001. It goes in the middle. It goes in the middle of the fin section, so about like here, I think. So that should be doable. And then there's one that goes above it, that's 2909. That's going to go like right here, which is actually a bit of a problem because this is going to be close. It should be okay, but it's going to be pretty tight. That's alright. This whole section should probably have been shifted up a bit. I probably should have put this closer to the nose cone, but we'll make do. Alright, yeah, the water's getting pretty tepid now. This one I'm just going to plop down here, kind of. It looks like it actually goes a little bit, I don't know. It looks like it goes kind of in line with where the fin changes shape. So I'm going to use that as my guide. It is nice to have a kind of reference point when you're doing this. That way when you're doing it on multiple faces and you can't see particularly clearly, you don't really need to keep flipping back and forth. You can just make reference to the vantage point in the rocket. Alright, so this is about as much as I'm going to get done with the water. The tape here then, to find where it actually starts. It starts right here. There we go. Alright. Yeah, this is just a tiny piece of masking tape that was holding it down. This stuff is very thin, which is the point. You can buy it in lots of different diameters, or widths, I guess. It should be 1/8 of an inch. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to loop it around here. Probably the other direction would make more sense. And I'm going to snip off the correct amount. with my scissors. Now, there's no harm in overlapping this. In fact, you probably want to overlap it a little bit, but not by much. So there I've got a little more than 1/4 of an inch of overlap or so. This, I think I'll just put that piece of tiny masking tape back on it to hold it together, because this is going to go into what is essentially a junk drawer, because I don't use it very often. I really don't want the whole thing unraveling. So, that's annoying. There we go, good enough. Now I'm just going to tape it down and kind of run the tape around it to hold it in place. Then, let's try to get the backing off this. Maybe easier said than done. No, there we go. There we go. Alright, now this goes just in front of the one decal that we already put on here. So I'm just going to put that down, and then, you know, you do want this straight, of course, so I'm going to do my best to keep it straight relative to, well, I actually did want to move that, so try to keep it straight relative to, that's interesting, came apart a little bit. Straight relative to the decal that I already put on there. That should actually be a pretty good guide. And that's the second time I put the rocket fin in the water. That's annoying as well. Alright, that lined up pretty well, and the overlap is not, well, actually I did a pretty bad job overlapping it there. Let's try that again. Now, if the overlap is kind of messy, you could always trim it, but I'm going to try not to need to do that. There we go. Alright, now I did bump one of these decals. In fact, I tore it. I'll try to realign it there. Okay, that's not so bad. I'm not going to be able to shift it though. I was kind of hoping against hope that I would have bumped it enough. Anyway, so that's as much as I'm going to get done here. The nice thing about this stuff too is that it's designed to be painted over, right? Because it's for automotive pinstriping. So you put it on a car and then you paint over top of it. Clear coat should work great with it. All right. Anyway, I'm going to do the rest of the decals off camera. There's no point in me doing them, heating up another custard cup full of water. It's more of the same. But anyway, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.